Welcome to our first business studies class. I am your teacher, Joseph Rudolopati. We are focusing on a Form 1 topic today that is called Introduction to Business Studies. It is the first Form 1 business studies topic. Now, these are the main content, of course, of the topic which we are going to look at. Number 1, we shall focus on the meaning of business studies. Number 2, we shall define some terms. Of course, those terms will be related to the business studies, of course, as a term. Then we shall look at different components of business studies, looking at areas which business studies as a subject covers. Then we shall go to the importance of business studies. Lastly, we shall finish with revision questions. Here we shall focus on the format of the KCSE business studies paper, and then we shall focus on how the questions are framed. And I hope as a candidate especially you're going to benefit when I reach on this last and the fifth part of this topic. Now we begin with the first part, meaning of business studies. Now, business studies is the study of all activities that center in and around production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. Now, mark those keywords: production, distribution, consumption, goods and services. We are going to define them later. We can also say business studies is a field of study that explains the need for production, distribution and consumption of goods and services. So we have looked at the meaning of business studies. Now we look at those definition of the key terms. The first was production. Now, what's production? Is simply the creation of goods and services. You can also say it is the increasing of the utility of a good or a service, or the act of creating a good or a service which has value and contributes to the utility of an individual. Of course, the term utility will be defined later. But the key thing is that production is the creation of goods and services. Because normally, when you buy goods, for example, the form in which we obtain them, of course, now it takes a process to obtain them in that form. So the entire process of course, achieving that form in which we obtain our goods is called what? Production. Now we go to definition number 2. Of course, the one who engages in production is known as what? A producer. We go to distribution. This is the movement of goods and services from producers to consumers. Because once the goods have been produced, somebody has to use them. The person using them is called a consumer. So distribution will involve what? The movement of the goods from producers to consumers, or basically it is the movement of goods and services from the point of production to point of consumption. Of course, at the point of production is where the producer is. At the point of consumption is where the consumer is. Now, our third term, consumption. This is the usage of a good or a service in order to derive utility from them. It's simply the action of using up a resource. So once you obtain like a loaf of bread and you eat, we say you are consuming. The loaf of bread was produced at a particular point, then it was distributed, meaning it was brought to where the consumer actually is. Then the consumer uses the good, which means he does what? He consumes the good. So consumption is simply what? Using the good or a service. We go to our next definition. Goods. Goods refer to tangible, consumable items which can be sold. The key thing is here is what? Tangible, something you can touch. For example, a loaf of bread is a good. Let's say furniture is example of a good. So anything you can touch. This ruler here is an example of a good. Now, what about a service? This refers to intangible products that can be sold, such as accountancy, banking, medical treatment, teaching, etc. So a good is tangible, a service is intangible. Of course, now both can be sold. Now, we go to resources. What are resources? This refers to money or materials used to produce other goods and services. Now, for you to produce, of course, you need, for example, to produce, let's say, a loaf of bread, you need wheat, you need sugar, you need, of course, the machine which will be able to bake that, let's say, loaf. So we are saying all those things required to produce are called what? Resources. So we are about to clear our definition of terms. We go to profit. Now we have profit here, we have loss. They are related because both of them we compare two things, what we call selling price and cost price. Cost price basically is the price which you obtain an item, and selling price is the price, of course, which you sell. Of course, when you're selling an item, whatever price you sell it is called what? Selling price. So for both profit and loss, we compare what? Selling price and cost price. In the case of profit, we are saying what? The selling price will be greater than the cost price. So what is profit? It is the excess of selling price over the cost price. What about loss? This is the excess of cost price over selling price. So in the case of profit, selling price is greater than what? Cost price. In the case of loss, cost price is greater than what? The selling price. So whenever you sell a good at a price which is higher than the cost price, we argue that you have made a profit. On the other hand, if you sell a good at a price which is lower than the, of course, now it is actually lower than the what? The price you bought it at, we say you have what? A loss. Now, our last term is society. Remember, business does not occur in a vacuum. The moment you conduct business, you are dealing with people. We have people in schools, people in hospitals, people, of course, in the market area, people in your neighborhood. So you're saying business does not occur in a vacuum. So where does it occur? Of course, business deals with what? Interaction of people, buyers and sellers, etc. So a society is a group of individuals involved in persistent social interaction. So in that society is where you do what? Carry out your business activities. Okay, we are done with our, of course, definitions. We go to the third part of the coverage of this topic, components of business studies. So basically, the business studies as a subject we are saying is divided into 5 key sections. The first is called what? Commerce. Now, what is commerce? It is the study of trade and aids to trade. So what is trade? Trade is the exchange of goods and services for money or other goods and services. The moment I talk about exchange of goods and services for money, I'm talking about what? Money trade system, where money is the what? The medium of course, exchange. Now, we go to what? The moment we talk about trade being what? Exchange of goods and services with other goods and services, we are talking about what? Barter trade system. So We have trade as what? The exchange of goods and services for money or other goods and services. What about S to trade? Now, S to trade refers to what? Activities which enable trade to take place in a more effective manner. They include stuff like transport, communication, etc. Of course, if you're keen, most of this is covered in Form 2. Form 2, we cover most of the S to trade. Now, commerce, having defined trade, we shall cover what we call home trade in Form 1, international trade in Form 4. So at least that takes care of what? The branch called, or component of business studies called commerce. We go to economics. What is economics? It is the study of how human beings strive to satisfy their unlimited wants using limited resources. Remember, the key word is what? They strive, meaning there's a kind of a struggle there. So human wants are so many, they are unlimited, but now the resources to be used to satisfy them are, of course, limited. They are few. So we have the case of what? Struggling or striving. Now remember, the key problem in economics is what? The allocation of resources. You find we have two families. One where let's say the father earns 50,000 per month. One, the father earns, let's say, 10,000 per month. But if you compare both families, they live in that they have a house where they stay in, they go to school, they have something to eat. So it means what? At the end of the day, with whatever resources you have, as a human being, you be very keen in terms of how you allocate your resources to take care of your needs. So you're saying that striving, that of course effort of trying to make sure you live despite your limited resources, we are saying it's called what? That study is called economics. So we go to our third part. It's called office practice, the third component of business studies. Now, what is office practice? It is the study of all activities that are carried out in an office. Here, if you are keen, we have a Form 1 topic called the office. Now, apparently, maybe the only topic covered in this section, meaning in the exam, most likely is a topic which will rarely fail to miss in the exam. So be very keen when tackling what? The topic, the office, which now will focus on what? This component of business studies called office practice. So what's office practice? The study of all activities that are carried out in an office. We go to the other part. It's called entrepreneurship. Now, what is entrepreneurship? It is the study of how to identify business opportunities and find the necessary resources to start and run the business. So you must be keen on the opportunities when they emerge, and then once you of course now note the opportunities, we are saying you must do what? Work hard to find the resources required to now start and run the business. So whoever engages in this activity is called what? An entrepreneur. This is a very key part, of course, now in the economy of any country. Now, this component will be covered in a topic called entrepreneurship, of course, in Form 1. We go to last part, which is accounting. What's accounting? The systematic keeping of business records to be used in decision making. So here we have records being kept. For what purpose? To be used in decision making. You must make decision as a business person, whether to expand, whether maybe to close the business, or maybe to switch to a new location. To do that, you need to have some information. We are saying accounting will provide that information. So accounting mainly is covered in Form 3 and Form 4. And of course now topics in accounting includes net worth of a business transaction, the ledger, we have the cash book, we have financial statements and source document and book of original entry. Now that marks the introduction of this topic.